My name is Aliya Mehra. I am 63 years old. I have lived a long life, full of love, full of loss, and full of small moments that I carry in my heart. But some days feel heavier than others. Some days, the love that once surrounded me feels like it's slipping through my fingers. It was a calm evening when she said it. Natasha, my daughter-in-law, who I had tried so hard to love as my own. She stood in the doorway of the kitchen, holding a cup of tea, and quietly said, "Mom, maybe it's time for you to find your own place." I smiled. I nodded. I whispered, "I understand." I wanted to cry. My chest felt heavy, but I didn't. I simply walked to the living room, watched the children play for a few minutes, and quietly began thinking about what I would do next. That night, I packed a small bag with a few things I truly needed: my saris, a few photographs, my late husband's watch, and left. That was the beginning of a life I never imagined I would have, a life where I was alone. I married Arman Mehra when I was 23. He was a kind, gentle man with a quiet strength. Together, we built a home, a life full of small joys. Our son, Adrian, was born 2 years later. From the moment I held him in my arms, I knew he would be the center of my world. Life was not easy. We were not wealthy, but we had enough to live comfortably. Arman worked hard, I worked at home, and together we built a life filled with love. I remember the nights when Adrian was small and he would climb into my bed crying, needing comfort. I would hold him close, hum softly, and whisper, "It's okay, my love, I'm here." Those nights when the house was silent except for our breathing were some of the most precious in my life. When Armand passed away, I was 45. Adrian was 18. That night, I held him in my arms as he cried, and I promised him, "We will be okay. We will survive this together." And we did. Years passed. Adrian grew into a fine young man. He studied hard, worked hard, and built a life that his father would have been proud of. Then Natasha came into his life. She was everything I had imagined for my son: confident, beautiful, elegant. She spoke softly, smiled easily, and for a while, I thought she would be the daughter I never had. She and Adrian married, and soon after, they had two children. Zara, the eldest, was a curious, lively girl with bright eyes that always seemed to notice everything around her. Arav, the youngest, was quiet, thoughtful, and gentle. I loved them immediately. I became their Nana Mom, as they called me, and I spent my days caring for them, playing with them, cooking their favorite meals, and reading them stories before bed. When Adrian insisted I move in with them, I hesitated. I had lived alone for years and was accustomed to the silence of my own home. But Adrian's eyes, full of concern and love, left me no choice. "Mom," he said gently, "the children adore you. I want you around. Please, come live with us." So I did. Their house was large and bright, with sunlight spilling through glass walls and marble floors that shone in the morning. At first, I felt like a visitor. I carefully arranged my belongings in a small room, kept to myself, and tried not to impose. But slowly, the house became mine too. I woke early, made breakfast, helped with school uniforms, braided Zara's hair, and fed Arav while he cooed and laughed. I hummed while cleaning, played soft music in the afternoons, and watched the children grow. I loved every small moment. Every time Zara leaned against me and whispered, "Nana Mom, you're the best," my heart swelled. Every time Arav reached for my hand when he stumbled, I felt needed. For a while, everything felt perfect. But life, as I learned, has a way of changing quietly. The first time I noticed a shift, it was subtle. Natasha frowned at the way I rearranged flowers on the dining table. She sighed when I offered to take Zara to the park. I overheard her whispering to Adrian, "Your mom is always here? Sometimes it feels like she doesn't respect our space." Adrian tried to reassure her. "She's my mother, Natasha. She only wants to help." I said nothing. I felt a small ache in my chest. I began to second-guess myself. Was I really a problem, or had I imagined the tension? Slowly, I started retreating. I kept to my room more often. I stopped offering help that wasn't asked for. I let Natasha have the space she seemed to want. I tried to remain invisible. Even the children noticed. Zara would tug at my sleeve and whisper, "Nana Mom, why do you look sad?" I forced a smile and said, "I'm fine, my darling, just a little tired." But the heaviness in my heart grew each day. I found myself sitting quietly in my room, watching the sunlight fall across the floor, listening to the distant hum of the city. I began writing letters I would never send. I began thinking about life, about love, and about loss. The small moments of happiness remained, playing with the children, cooking meals, hearing Adrian's laughter, but they were always tinged with the weight of unspoken tension. I began to understand something I had never realized before. Even the people we love most can make us feel like strangers in our own home. Weeks passed. Natasha's words remained soft, but the meaning behind them grew heavier. She smiled less. She avoided looking at me sometimes. I felt the distance forming in small increments, each unnoticed by everyone else, but painfully clear to me. I tried to give space. I tried to retreat further. I tried to tell myself that it was temporary. But deep down, I knew that things were changing in a way I could not stop. One evening, it happened. I was drying dishes in the kitchen, humming softly, when Natasha came up to me with her cup of tea. "Mom, maybe it's time for you to find your own place." I felt my hands freeze. I wanted to protest, to cry, to beg, but I didn't. I smiled gently, nodded, and whispered, "I understand." That night, I packed a small bag. My saris, a few photographs, my husband's watch, and a small keepsake box of memories. I kissed the children on their foreheads as they slept, whispered soft promises that I would always love them, and walked out of the house into the quiet night. The door closed behind me. The sound echoed in my heart. I learned then that love is not always enough, that even when you give your heart fully, it can still be met with boundaries you cannot cross. As I walked away, the city lights reflected on the streets, and I felt both lost and free. Free to live, even if it meant living alone. Free to feel, even if it meant feeling heartbreak. The house I had called home was behind me. The family I loved was behind me. And the life I thought I would have with them, with laughter and warmth filling every corner, that life was gone. I would not return. I would not ask. I would simply continue, carrying my love quietly in my heart, alone but still standing. The first morning in my own apartment felt unreal. I had rented a small, quiet space in a part of the city I barely knew. The walls were pale, the floors cold, the rooms small and empty. There was no laughter echoing down the hallways, no tiny feet running to greet me. Just the quiet hum of the city outside my window. I stood in the kitchen, holding a cup of tea, staring at the bare countertop. For a moment, I thought I would break down, but I didn't. I simply took a deep breath and reminded myself that this was my life now. The first few days were the hardest. I woke early, as I always had, but there was no one waiting for breakfast, no children calling for milk or toast. I cooked for myself, ate quietly, and then sat in the empty living room, staring out the window. The city moved on outside, but my heart seemed stuck in that moment when Natasha had spoken those words. Maybe it's time for you to find your own place. I began keeping a journal. I wrote everything I felt: sadness, longing, memories of my husband, memories of Adrian as a child, memories of the laughter of Zara and Arav. The writing did not heal me, but it gave me a place to let the feelings exist without being swallowed by them. Everywhere I went, I carried memories. When I cooked, I remembered the children leaning over the counter to steal little pieces of chocolate or dough. When I walked in the park, I remembered holding Zara's hand as she learned to ride her bicycle, Arav toddling behind, laughing at every stumble. Even the smell of bread reminded me of quiet mornings in Adrian's house, of the sun streaming through the glass windows, of the warmth that had once filled every corner. It was painful, and yet it was all I had. I began to create small routines for myself. I made my morning tea just the way Arman liked it. I planted a few flowers on the balcony. I would watch the sun rise slowly, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. These small things gave me comfort, but they could not replace the presence of my family. Sometimes I would cook an extra portion of food and set it aside, almost as if my family would appear at the door. I would tell myself, "This is just for you, my heart. One day it will be enough." Loneliness settled in like a shadow. Evenings were the hardest. I would sit on the couch staring at the walls, listening to the distant sounds of the city. Cars honked, people laughed, dogs barked, life continued around me, but I felt removed from it, as if I were looking at it through glass. I thought often about Adrian, about Zara and Arav. I remembered the way Zara would hug me tightly, the way Arav would hide behind my sari when he was shy. I remembered the small arguments, the laughter, the bedtime stories. And I realized that love does not always protect us from pain, that even when we are needed and cherished, life can change in an instant. Nights became my time for reflection. I would sit by the window, the city lights twinkling below, and let my mind wander through memories. I thought about my life with Arman, about the years we spent building a home. I thought about Adrian growing up, about the first time he rode his bicycle without training wheels, about his graduation, about the day Natasha walked into our lives. And I thought about the day I left, quietly, without protest, holding on to dignity even as my heart broke. I would whisper to myself, "It is okay to feel this way. It is okay to grieve. It does not make me weak." Regret was a constant companion. Not for leaving Adrian's house, I had no choice, but for all the small things I wished I had done differently. I wished I had spent more time with Adrian when he was a teenager, talking to him about his dreams and fears. I wished I had been more understanding of Natasha's world, her worries and struggles. I wished I had hugged the children a little longer each morning, told them a little more often how much I loved them. But life does not give us the chance to redo the past. It only gives us memories, precious, painful, and sometimes cruel. Even in loneliness, I found a quiet strength. I learned to walk in the park alone, to feed the birds, to water my small balcony garden. I learned to cook meals just for myself, to make small routines that made the empty apartment feel like a home, even if it would never feel warm again. I discovered that survival is not just about living. It is about carrying your heart through heartbreak, keeping it open even when it is heavy, and finding small joys in a world that seems to have moved on without you. Sometimes I would walk past Adrian's neighborhood. I would see the house from afar, the garden where the children played, the windows where light streamed in the evening. I would remember the mornings of laughter, the dinners, the quiet evenings spent together. And I would feel a pain so deep that it took my breath away. I never returned. I never knocked on the door. I never asked for what I had lost. Because some things cannot be fixed. Some doors, once closed, remain closed. And some hearts, once broken, must continue alone. Even in heartbreak, life offered small joys. I began visiting a small library nearby, finding comfort in books and stories. I joined a small community group for women who lived alone. We shared tea, stories, and quiet companionship. It was not the laughter of my grandchildren, nor the warmth of my son's house, but it was something I could hold on to without fear of it being taken away. I walked slowly through the streets, noticing small beauties, a bird landing on the railing, a child chasing a butterfly, sunlight reflecting off a puddle after the rain. I began to notice life again, even if my heart still ached. I began to understand that love does not always lead to happiness, that the people we love most can sometimes hurt us without meaning to, simply because life moves in ways we cannot control. I forgave silently, not for them, but for me. I forgave Natasha for her words, Adrian for not stopping them, the world for moving on while I was left behind. Forgiveness did not erase the pain. It did not bring them back. But it gave me peace, a fragile, quiet peace that allowed me to breathe again, even if only a little. The apartment was small. The streets were noisy. The world outside was busy, unyielding, and full of life, and I was alone. But I survived. I survived with a heart that had loved deeply and lost completely. I survived with memories that were painful, yet beautiful. I survived by carrying my love quietly, by learning to breathe in the spaces where laughter once lived, and by finding small strength in the ordinary days. I was alone, but I was still me. Time passed slowly. The first year after leaving Adrian's house was the hardest. Each morning, I woke to silence. No tiny feet ran to greet me. No laughter echoed in the hallways. The apartment felt empty, too small to contain my memories, yet somehow large enough to make me feel lost. I would sit by the window and watch the world move outside. People walking to work, children laughing, couples holding hands. The city carried on without me, and I was left behind, carrying my heart like a fragile glass vessel that could shatter with the slightest touch. I established routines to survive. I woke early, made tea, watered my balcony plants, and read books I had always meant to finish. I cooked meals slowly, savoring small flavors, even though there was no one to share them with. Evenings were the hardest. I would sit in the quiet living room, staring at the walls, thinking about the home I had left. Memories came unbidden. Adrian as a boy, Zahra spilling milk at breakfast, Arav hiding behind my sari when he was shy. Sometimes I would cry quietly into my pillow, mourning not just the family I had lost, but the life I had once imagined. The children were always in my heart. I remembered Zara's curious eyes, her questions that never seemed to stop, her laughter that filled every corner of the house. I remembered Arav's quiet hands, the way he clutched mine, his trust and innocence. I would sometimes imagine them growing up. I would imagine Zara learning to cook one day, Arav taking his first steps into adulthood. I wished I could be there to guide them, to laugh with them, to scold them gently when they made mistakes. But I could not. That life had passed. I had no choice but to hold on to their memory, tucked carefully inside my heart, where nothing could take them away. Loneliness became my companion, both harsh and gentle. It reminded me of what I had lost, but it also forced me to see myself clearly. I could no longer hide behind my role as a mother or grandmother. I had to exist simply as myself. I walked in the park often, observing families and couples. I smiled faintly at their joy, but the smile did not reach my eyes. Sometimes I would sit on a bench and feed the birds, talking softly to them, imagining that I was speaking to my children. Nana, Mum loves you, I would whisper. And even though they could not respond, I felt the words return to me like a warm echo, reminding me that love persists even when it is unreturned. I thought of Adrian constantly. I remembered holding him when he cried, teaching him how to ride a bicycle, watching him grow into the man he became. Sometimes I would imagine what he was doing now. Was he happy? Did he think of me? Did he regret the day I left? I knew he must. I could see it in his eyes when he spoke to me before I left. The hesitation, the worry, the regret he could never voice. But those thoughts, those feelings were his to carry. My life had moved into silence, and I could not ask for reunion. I had learned that love sometimes requires letting go, even when it is the hardest thing in the world. Even as I mourned, I found small joys. I joined a few community programs for women living alone. We shared tea, stories, and quiet companionship. I discovered the small delight of books, the comfort of writing letters I would never send, and the peace of watching the city wake and sleep. I began cooking for myself in new ways, experimenting with spices and flavors I had never tried. Sometimes I would make a meal and sit quietly, tasting each bite, allowing myself to remember the joy of life, even in solitude. I planted flowers on my balcony, bright marigolds, soft jasmines, and watched them bloom. I cared for them, watered them, and found in their growth a quiet parallel to my own. Nostalgia never left me. I walked past Adrian's street sometimes, careful not to be seen. I watched the house from afar, the garden where the children played, the windows where sunlight streamed in the evening. I remembered the laughter, the meals, the quiet evenings, the bedtime stories. I remembered the small arguments, the hugs, the kisses on foreheads, and I felt a sharp ache in my heart, a mixture of longing and regret, not for leaving, but for all the small moments I could never reclaim. I whispered to the night, I will never forget. I will always love. But I must live my life. even if it is alone. I began to understand something that had always eluded me. Love is not always about togetherness. Love can exist in absence, in memories, in quiet corners of the heart. The people we care for most can hurt us without meaning to, simply because life moves in ways we cannot control. I forgave silently, not for anyone else, but for myself. I forgave Natasha for her words, Adrian for not stopping them, and even the world for moving on while I was left behind. Forgiveness did not heal the pain. It did not bring my family back, but it gave me a small measure of peace, a quiet dignity that allowed me to continue. Years passed. The children grew taller in my memory than they were in reality. Adrian became a man, carrying the weight of his choices in ways I could only imagine. And I remained here, alone, carrying my love and my heartbreak like two intertwined threads. The apartment became my home, not a warm, bustling home filled with laughter, but a home of quiet reflection, of memories, and of the strength I discovered in my own heart. I had learned to live with absence. I had learned to exist with the echoes of love that could no longer be spoken or touched. Now, sitting by my balcony, watching the sun rise over the city, I understand. The closest people can hurt us the most, but the heart, even when broken, survives. It carries memories, love, and sorrow all at once. It continues, slowly, quietly, without complaint. I have no children running to greet me, no laughter echoing in the halls, no warmth of a family dinner, but I am still alive. I am still here. And in this quiet, heartbroken existence, I have found a strange peace. The life I imagined with Adrian, Zara, and Arav is gone. I cannot reclaim it. I will never return. But my love for them, my memories of them, and the strength I have discovered in myself will remain forever. I am alone, I am heartbroken, and I am still standing. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It means more than you know. And I would love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, how is your life going? Are you living alone after losing someone you loved? Are you struggling with distance from your children? Or maybe you are still rebuilding yourself after heartbreak. Share your experiences. Your words might become someone's strength tonight. I read your comments with love and care. They remind me that none of us are truly alone. We are all carrying silent stories in our hearts. Thank you for being here with me in this quiet moment. Take care of your heart. Hold your memories gently and keep walking forward, no matter how heavy the road feels. Would love to meet you again in the comments and see you in my next video. Until then, goodbye and stay blessed.